Good evening and welcome to the Charter Township of Elmwood Planning Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, October 18th, 2022, convened at 7 p.m. Please stand and join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Mikowski. Here. Ms. Roberts.
Here.
Henry Luda.
Here.
Fred Bechtel.
Here.
Jeff April.
Here.
Jonas Huesma.
Here.
Nate McDonald.
Present.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum present, so we can proceed with our meeting. We are on to item D, limited public comment only on the agenda items. We ask that if you wish to make a public comment, please come to the podium. We will ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. There will be a second public comment period at the end of the meeting, and the second public comment period is literally an open topic. So if you wish to make a public comment, we'll open public comment now at 7:01 p.m.
12684 South Cedar Lane. In your packets for tonight's meeting, you have some comments that Rod and I submitted, but since he's not here tonight, I'm just going to highlight a few of our thoughts. First, we'd like to thank Sarah and the Planning Commission for initiating a review of the current master plan. As we watch controversies play out in Elmwood and other Leelanau County townships, it's probably a good time to clarify some of the zoning ordinances and to make some updates to the master plan regarding our future growth. A few of our concerns are how to manage growth and still maintain our dark skies and rural character of the township, how to prevent further encroachment on our residential neighborhoods due to lighting, noise, and traffic, especially if more development and land uses are allowed along Cherry Bend Road. As for lighting, our personal neighborhood issue has been resolved, and so for the most part, other lighting concerns have been addressed in Sarah's proposed changes to the ordinance that she's presenting tonight. So as the master plan update continues, we hope if you choose to do a survey that you'll allow some residents to participate in the process of coming up with questions or reviewing them. And then the last thing I'd like to address is public participation. Because residents don't attend the meetings, you may think we're not paying attention or care about participating. And there's probably a few reasons for this, and you can read about some of them in my comments. But I would like to mention that if we attend meetings in person and everyone doesn't speak into the microphone, we can't hear what's being said. So instead, we watch the video recordings at home of the board and the planning commission meetings, and from there we're able to control the volume as needed. So thank you for this opportunity to provide some of our thoughts for the commissioner's attention. We'll continue to watch and listen and look forward to remaining involved. And I may not stay for the whole meeting this evening, but we'll be sure to be watching it tomorrow. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Any others?
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment at 7:04 p.m. On to item F, the minutes of the September 20th, 2020.
Agenda.
E, I'm sorry, E. Oh, I'm sorry.
Agenda modification.
Right, I'd already crossed that off, so I guess I was just ahead of myself. Excuse me. Agenda modifications and approval. Commissioners, please review the remaining items on the agenda. And if you feel as though there needs to be any modifications, please do so in the form of a motion. Otherwise, the chair will need a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Now, moving on to the minutes of the September 20th, 2022 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as printed for September 20th, 2022.
We have a motion to approve the September 20th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Support.
We have support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Item G, the consent calendar. Prior to seeking a motion, does anyone have any questions for Sarah regarding the consent calendar?
I make a motion that we file the consent calendar as printed.
Second.
We have a motion and support to file a consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent calendar will be filed as presented. Item H, declaration of conflict of interest. Commissioners, please review the remaining items on the agenda. If you have a conflict with one or more of those, please say so at this time. Hearing none, we'll declare that there's no conflict. Proceeding with item IA, old business food trucks. In your packet, there were two documents dealing with food trucks. And Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add?
So the text that's, before you has not changed for a couple of months. At your last meeting, you wanted our fire chief to have a look at it and, submit some comments. I didn't get anything in writing, and I do not see him here. I did have a conversation with him yesterday. He did not really see any issues with it. I would note that we do have, I have a suggested regulation that all food trucks must have approval by the fire department. So, that's kind of a catch-all, so, he would review food trucks if this is ultimately approved by the township. I would like to get to a point to move forward with this, so friendly reminder, this is, it's my understanding that the commission wanted to move forward with a licensing ordinance, so that would be a police power ordinance, so that, ultimately is reviewed and issued by, by the township board. It can be, you could, if you feel comfortable with this, you could make a motion to recommend, review by the township board. If you want to further discuss, that would be great. Just let me know what kind of changes you would like to see so I can prepare that and, get you a new document for review. I would like to just kind of make a couple of changes to what I do have in front of you. So under the proposed section 5.4 land use and zoning district table, so that's on page 1 of 6, instead of just listing number 52 as food trucks, list it as mobile food vending area / food trucks, because the intent is to regulate where they are located. It does reference setbacks and everything, so I think that would be helpful to include. Other than that, I can't remember the number, but it talks about, or the letter, I should say, proposed regulation, letter R, parking shall conform to Article 6 of the zoning ordinance. We will need to amend our zoning ordinance if this is ultimately approved by the township board, and one of those changes will need to be to Article 6, which is our parking regulation table. I would propose having a minimum required parking spaces of, 4, because, it is a mobile, operation. And then also staying consistent with our existing regulation for picnic tables, which is 1.5 spaces for every picnic table. So if they want to have additional seating, they would need to, have additional parking spaces for that.
Sarah, does the parking ordinance require paved parking, or can it just be gravel?
It can be gravel.
Would you, Sarah, would you go over for one more time with me what 54 is going to read? Is it mobile food vending area / food trucks?
Yes, mobile food vending area / food trucks,
Thank
as
you very
opposed to
much.
just food trucks.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
Did we decide on a number? Or was this something that would go to the board and they kind of talk about it, or?
So the ordinance, the proposed ordinance would be would recommend, the township board would set the number through a recommendation of the planning commission. I don't have a exact recommendation now, but we had discussed in the past basing it off of like a linear number. So, for example, we're proposing, it as an allowed use within the light industrial, shoreline commercial, general commercial, neighborhood commercial, and the municipal, complex. I can't remember the exact one. Anyway, here. So based on like a linear calculation using the Leelanau tax parcel viewer, that is approximately, thank you, Carrie, for running to my office to grab this, approximately 11,000 square feet. So if we want them every, 1,500 square feet, and by square feet, I mean linear feet, that would be 7 licenses. If we want it every 2,000, that would be 5. It would actually be 4.5, but rounding up to 5. I would not recommend basing it off of the number of parcels and coming to a number based on that, just because, we do have a variety of different sized parcels. And for example, in the light industrial zoning district, we have quite small number of parcels. So if my GIS is acting up with my attribute table, so I can't get that easy, quick number for you. But if you, want me to look at that, that's something, I'm happy to do once I spend a little bit more time and get my attribute table to reappear.
Well, I think, if I may, through our discussion, we just talked about maybe 3.
Right.
And basing it on, we're just gonna try this ordinance and see how it works. And that wasn't really based on anything necessarily, just that's our gut feeling that would be enough to try.
Right.
Is
Two-
that-
Yeah, 2 or 3.
2 or 3,
Right.
yeah, exactly. And I'm still of that mindset. I think that's plenty.
Then I would recommend we do some math and like have it base it off of a linear number. So it, it's not just a number that, I understand that, 3 does sound good, but we should base it off of, I would just want something to go back to.
Sure. That's the number we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Until we see how this works out.
Yeah, so basically using sort of like the linear formula we talked about earlier, the old Norris property. So you could have, let's say if you're gonna allow 1 food truck every 500 feet, for example, you could probably have like 1 food truck there, versus, like the little fleet where they've got kind of a clump of them.
Well, so what's prepared is, you're only allowed 1 food truck per parcel.
Okay. And so if there was, let's say, a larger parcel, it if you had the linear formula, you could theoretically, if the parcel supported it, you could have 2 food trucks on a parcel, or would we just stick to only the 1 food truck per?
At this point in time, what's still proposed is it's 1 per parcel, and I'm just recommending, suggesting a number to the township board based on a
Okay.
linear calculation. So that would be, what, every 3,600?
Okay.
Right, so if we double the linear
Yeah.
calculation, then that puts us back in line with 2 or 3.
Mhm.
So are the commissioners comfortable with 2 or 3?
I'd say
3?
We could do 3.
Okay. So it sounds like we'd like to start out with 3.
So, and I'm all right with three, but I just got to thinking about one per parcel, or only one per parcel. I mean, realistically, we kind of looked at some of the properties throughout the township, and probably the best place for it would be the Norris School, and that facility, more so than any other, could accommodate more if we wanted it to. Is that something that they could apply for? If there wasn't any other, could they apply for another one? And could we allow that? Or are we stuck with one per parcel? And maybe we don't want more than one, but that's the ideal place.
Or even two separate
Right.
licenses for one
For
parcel.
one parcel.
Yeah.
So I'm just,
We would need to change the wording to, say if you have, a minimum of,
so many square
yeah,
feet
so
or
many
what.
square feet, you can have two on site.
And it's just something to think about. I don't care what you do with it, but it seems like of any parcel in the township, that one certainly is a prime place for it, and could accommodate two or three just on that parcel.
If that's something that property owner wants to pursue,
Right.
right? I mean, we always have to be careful that, we're doing this for,
And I don't know that they do at all.
Mhm.
I just, it might be the place to put two different ones, so you can,
Seems very accommodating,
right.
that spot. But again, we don't know if that's something that anybody would want
Right.
to
No, but I could see the case to be made for, a mini little fleet area, where if you kind of put those together,
Yeah.
be, the business owners might like that as well as like the people that want to frequent the establishments.
Mhm.
Just you have a zone to kind of go to. Not to pigeonhole them into an area, but.
No, and like Sarah said, I don't know that they'd even be interested, but I don't know that we want to limit it for them either, or at least give them some sort of out that they could apply for 2 trucks there or whatever.
Can I ask Sarah a question?
Mhm.
If we didn't change the verbiage, how would they, if they wanted to go that route, try and?
they would not be able to, because if it would be a licensing ordinance, they would not have the ability to apply for a variance from the zoning board of appeals.
Gotcha. So that should be addressed before.
My problem with that is that, the ideal space, as we've all acknowledged, is a G-track right now. What makes those sometimes work is when you have more than one together, because you need a draw.
Right.
You need enough of a draw to make it viable for them. I mean, if you have one out in the desert, so to speak,
Right.
Right, it spreads it out too much.
people aren't gonna go there.
Well,
I agree.
and then if somebody's gonna go there, if they take a family, somebody might want burgers and somebody else might want tacos, and so that gives you that option, you can order at each of them. So I only bring it up just because I don't know that we should limit it, because we really didn't think of any other properties that it would even work too well other than that particular property. So
Brewery Creek might,
that's township owned.
there's
So-
areas of it that aren't.
Is there?
There's the
Well-
area for lease that's on the side right adjacent to Subway, clear property,
Okay.
for example.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we
Is there
look at
still a
that?
foundation floating in there?
Pardon?
Isn't there still a foundation kind of floating in that area, or did they pull that all out?
It's full.
Is it?
Anyway, it's not evident.
Right, okay.
So did we sufficiently complicate this for you?
I don't think too much. I mean, I could, add some additional verbiage to that no more than one food truck is permitted on any one parcel at any one time, and then have a statement like unless that parcel is over a certain square footage.
Okay.
then-
And I just had one thought that occurred to me, and what if I owned a restaurant and wanted to have a food truck in my parking lot? The example is in Ann Arbor, Zingerman's Roadhouse, they've got their restaurant, and then they've got the Airstream trailer. If you're kind of in a hurry and don't wanna sit inside, you go to Airstream Trailer, they give you a number, and then they text your cell phone, you go to the window, get your stuff and drive off. And it's basically a self-contained food kitchen, but it's just a Airstream trailer up on blocks that could be towed away at any time.
So that would be permitted under this licensing ordinance.
Okay.
I mean, we do, I did propose, like, new food trucks shall not be parked within 150 feet of an existing brick and mortar restaurant during the hours of unless the food truck is operated in conjunction with the
Okay,
restaurant.
okay.
So,
okay.
you know, if, you know, Dockside wanted to pursue one, they could. West End, the parking would just be very important
Mhm.
then. I mean, like Apache is very limited on parking, so if they wanted to pursue one, it would be difficult. You know, that said, you know, they could pursue a shared parking strategy. That is allowed under Article 6.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
there was some question as to the fire chief's take on this, and he did make it, if it's,
Okay.
if it's appropriate this time, that maybe he'd have some input for us.
Well, yeah, just if you could just give us your overview of, like, what would you look for, if you were gonna inspect a food truck, what would you look for?
Funny, because that's my issue.
Don't know what to look for, huh?
Kind of, exactly. There's I did prepare something.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I'll just try to talk a little louder. The whole idea of having the food trucks in there, the fire department doesn't really have a major stance one way or the other for or against, but there will be concerns about their operation and maintenance. So when it comes to talking about the approval process, which we're named in there to do, what is the standard that we use to approve them, or to provide our feedback to the planner? So we have our concerns, obviously, from firefighting standpoint about the fuels that will be involved, not just for the cooking, but the vehicle itself, generators that are on site, and things like that. We have concerns about the cooking, you know, grease buildup, shut-offs, you know, housekeeping issues, and if there's a fire suppression in there. I mentioned the portable generators, their proximity, but carbon monoxide issues if they're too close or they're on board the vehicle itself. And in general, the proximity of everything that's going on in that area with the food truck itself. So I see there's stuff in the draft ordinance about tables and chairs being kept so far away, about the food truck being so far away from certain buildings, which I got a question on, but, and is it gonna impede access? There's reference about it impeding the normal flow of people, traffic, et cetera. So where all that comes down to is these things to look at, but we don't have, as a township, we don't have an adopted fire code that says that this is our go-to document for this stuff. So, from my standpoint, if the choice is to move ahead with this, we have to look at, is the township gonna adopt a fire code? Can we adopt part of a fire code or an established, document out there already that we can use formally to be consistent in how we evaluate food trucks? There are other things in the township that something like this could apply to, but, I just need to make sure that I have something to go to, because I don't know enough about fuel systems and propane systems, and I don't have the expertise, my people don't have the expertise, so we would have to invest more time and energy into it. Not saying it can't happen, I just wanna let you know what we would have to, what path we would have to go down. Now, there are standards out there, that are referenced in a lot of other documents and permitting processes, in other jurisdictions for approval of food trucks with the fire department, how they get involved. Most reference an NFPA standard. So that stuff is out there, it's just we don't have it adopted here, so there's some gray area on whether I can formally apply it to that process. Because essentially, we're taking the decision, it seems to me, in how I'm viewing it, that we're taking the board out of it. Once this process is done, they apply, and then the planner just like, if, check, 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 yep, they met it all, they got my approval, boom, you can issue the license. So if I'm wrong, I apologize, but, so that means when I apply approval, it needs to be, you know, spot on. I'm not relying on somebody else to say whether my opinion, my information is good, bad, or indifferent.
It would be a stretch for us to, I'm looking on page 1 of 6, C, sub E, all food trucks must have approval by the fire department. And if we put like a comment in there using the, was it the NFP standards?
Yeah,
But you
They're-
gotta adopt them though.
yeah, Township, yeah, I could use them, but I would think that it would be more appropriate that something was adopted by the township, because then they change over time, they get reviewed and updated and such, as well as there are a lot of them, so,
Okay.
but, however, if I were just to review and provide input, it still seems like that doesn't have enough meat to it, just for me to say, hey, yeah, it looks good. It seems like that anybody that comes to us and is gonna put this mobile restaurant in the community, they would know right where to go to look to find out what the standard is.
Do you know, is there standards set forth by the state for that type of stuff? Because when I looked at this,
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting question, because when I looked at it for more whether you could get your apparatus around it and cover it in case of fire, not necessarily looking at the unit itself for safety, as far as if they're compliant with the right gaskets on their valves and all that kind of stuff. I didn't think that would be in your end of it. I thought that would be covered somewhere else through state licensing, but maybe not.
I called a few agencies, and anything that had building in the title didn't want to touch a food truck. So, the county, the state, and I called the fire marshal's office about it, and I called the health department, asked where they land on it. The health department's like, yeah, is the food gonna make people sick? That's what we're worried about. Is it clean, and is it gonna make people sick? As far as fire stuff or maintenance of like the fuel systems, propane, compressed natural gas, CNG, or whatever that they're operating on, it's not necessarily where they come into the game. So that would be more of a fire-related thing. And the state is, since we do not have, apologize for this getting a little convoluted, but because we don't have an adopted fire code, we would reference what the state has adopted, which is pretty broad and missing a lot of things, and it's from 2006. So the food truck issue isn't really addressed in the life safety code at that point. And so that's one of those additions that's a few back, that's been updated, but the state hasn't brought it up to speed yet. So I'm more than happy to dig into it more. I just, personally, well, no, I shouldn't say that. The food truck thing, I'm good as far as the fire department, but I just want to let you know that there's going to be work ahead of us, and if you were to say, go forth and make this happen, it might come to a point where we have to go to the township board and say, we need you to adopt this, if this is the way you want to go.
That puts a wrench in it for sure. I was just thinking that you'd come down and make sure that you could get around and there was, enough room to get a fire truck in there or whatever, and that, I guess that's the way I was looking at it, but not that you're not, thinking it through further. Safety is, important. I just didn't know that it would fall on your hands.
Yeah, and that's the way I was approaching it too, as I was reading more and more and more of them, they kept getting into the plumbing stuff. I say the plumbing, but I'm referring to like the gas lines and things like that, and the storage of the propane. And most of them, the licensing applications that I saw were checkbox stuff. Do you have your health department certificate? Do you do these things? Are you gonna do inspections on your fuel systems every time you change out a bottle and that? So they're mostly self-check things. So I'm kinda like, well, that seems pretty straightforward. If they're documenting what they're doing and we show up and we say, hey, do you have your inspection thing? I'm like, okay, great, yeah, no problem. But as far as being out there, having the staff to enforce it, I mean, what, 3 trucks maybe? Not a big deal. But just having people that know what to look for and getting people trained on what that standard is. So I need to look at what all those little details are. If I've got to apply a standard, what those details are that we have to be responsible for. So, and I did want to mention, you talked about the parcel thing and the dimensions. If you do go more than one, and they're talking about the lot size or dimensions or whatever, they probably shouldn't be crammed together. There should be some space between them, so I don't know if that affects like how narrow or wide a lot is and such that you allow them on, or how many. Or if I have one on my lot and somebody has one on their lot, so, next door to me, so.
Great. Thank you, Ray.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
I'll provide a copy of this to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know what way to go with it from there. I don't know if we need to look into the fire ordinance and adopt that first. It would make more sense to have that in place first before we adopt a food truck thing and not have the protection that we need.
And really, the township board would be the entity to adopt the fire code.
And that would be developed by our fire department, because talking about expertise, I do not have that expertise.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Well,
No.
it's out there. You just have to set the standard, whichever standard you want.
Doug?
Yeah, the question would be, what does Grand Traverse do? Because they do have a plethora of food trucks. If they even address that. I mean, we can't be the first ones that's looked at this, I hope.
So essentially our food truck project is just temporarily
Set aside.
until we get more information with respect for a fire code adopted by the township. So when the fire department does an inspection, they have something to relate their inspection to. Okay. Any other comments on food trucks? Thank you. Moving on to I, sub B, review and discussion on current master plan. Sarah provided us with some documents with respect to the master plan. Chris had put together a review. I had just put, I kind of went through it section by section and just put, some of my thoughts down. And I guess, Sarah, some of the things that sort of popped up were sort of the change in the demographic of Elmwood Township over the last few years since we've done our master plan. Oh, golly, what? Oh, the notes from your workshop, that was what I was looking at. We want to maintain the agricultural heritage of our township, yet of the people moving in, how many people are moving in to farm? It's just a sort of a general question, and I think in spite of you know, the population increasing, we still have, my opinion is we still need to preserve the agricultural and forest lands that we have, so everything is just not built on.
If I may, I think it might be helpful to just kind of like give a brief overview of, you know, where we've been with discussion, and where, you know, we're going with this discussion. You know, as required, master plans are required, under the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. It's required that the Planning Commission review their master plan every 5 years, either re-adopt it, you know, amend it. You know, amending can be, you know, just a couple of, you know, general updates, or it can be like an overhaul, which doesn't necessarily have to be rewriting every single word in here. It could be, you know, doing, you know, extensive outreach. It could be, you know, including information on resiliency, doing more, you know, mapping. All of that can be incorporated into, you know, what would not just be a minor amendment, what I would deem, or the Planning Enablement Act would deem a minor amendment. You know, discussion, I brought this to the commission's attention a little bit early because the plan was adopted, our current master plan was adopted in 2018. So we're coming up close to that five-year deadline. Again, the plan doesn't expire. It's just we are required to review it every 5 years. You know, in going into our 5th year when, you know, we should be looking at this, I would like to prepare a budget for the township board to consider whether or not we are going to be, you know, doing, you know, something in-house, sending it out, and if we're sending it out, are we doing, you know, again, relatively more or less minor-ish amendments or a major overhaul? So that's kind of where I would like discussion to be on. I mean, part of that obviously is talking about any major red flags, you know, the commission has seen in our, you know, master plan. You know, with that said, I did prepare a sheet just with notes from the master plan workshop that occurred on 10/6. Just kind of like highlighting, you know, key items, so things that have changed. We had commissioners mention growth, STRs, working remote, change in community complexion. COVID happened. We went through a major pandemic. What was the impact of that on the community? That's not in here. There's been an increase in small hobby farms and farm markets. Don't necessarily need to read all of these bullet points, but to just kind of like summarize our discussion. And I also did include some other talking points because I do agree, like Elmwood Township, I'm also new. I understand, so I am learning through all of this, but I do understand that Elmwood Township is very proud of its agricultural heritage, and how do we find ways to preserve that? You know, that I would say leads into one of my kind of flags with our plan is we have lovely objectives, but we don't have as many action items as I would like. They are more lofty goals. So, you know, that's something that, you know, I would like. I would think action items would be helpful. I'm going into a little bit more discussion than I anticipated, but essentially that's where we've been. That's where, you know, I would like to see, you know, our discussion tonight kind of continue. I'd also, you know, mention that, again, I've already reiterated that master plans don't expire. Master planning process, if we do either go, you know, an amendment or, you know, an overhaul, it takes time. This is not going to be resolved tonight. It's going to last at least a year. And, you know, other neighboring municipalities are going through this process as well, TC, Bingham. And so that's kind of all I have for you right now.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just to kind of get things rolling, we could start with some of, maybe one of the easy sections would be the maps. Are we at a point where some of our maps need updating in terms of, we really haven't had that many new subdivisions in the last 5 years occur. So, you know, these are just general questions I'm bringing up. So, like the land use map, does that need updating? Do we have a good map of the wetlands in the township? And would that map come from a a specialty agency that denotes, would that be like the US Geological Survey or something like that, that would come in and delineate the wetlands and the floodplains?
So there is a wetlands map viewer. So it's an interactive map viewer that anybody can use. It's on Eagle's webpage, and it essentially is the national wetlands layer. So it's not an exact delineation. It's more of a guide, helping, planning purposes. It is not incorporated into our master plan. I don't recall seeing it anywhere. We do have our, we have a map showing, soils, but yeah, not wetlands. And, if we want to talk about resiliency, locating wetlands and floodplains would be helpful to know where they're located, because, Michigan is projected to see an increase in precipitation. So how is that going to impact our land and the uses on those parcels? And doing that kind of data analysis, I have some experience with GIS, but I'm going to say I am certainly not an expert, so relying on, having somebody come in to assist with if we want any correlations done between maps and looking at, projected ideas for an overlay, that would be best served by an outside individual coming in and working with the commission, the public, and the township, just, in general.
And the,
Rick, if I may on that, we kind of do have that soils map that gives you muck and water for sure, which is fairly well laid out. But as far as that goes, if we're going to, or if there is a development on any particular parcel, we're going to have that assessed at that time. To put it on a map, or to spend a lot of money and put it on a map here, I'm not sure it's terribly important. And, if we can just snippet a page from somebody else's preliminary work, I think that would be appropriate. But rather than try to create this ourselves or have somebody create it, I think we have the information that we need here in this soils map to do the work that we need. I don't think we need to be any more exact. I guess my point is, if somebody's developing a parcel, we're gonna ask for wetland delineation. We're not gonna go to this map. That's not gonna be near accurate enough to give us the information we need. On a 6x12 map, it's nowhere good enough to be specific to a parcel. And so I think if we really need that information, we need it when that parcel's being developed, not necessarily that specific in a little map in our master plan. Master plan is kind of a broad brush of things.
right.
Doesn't give you that specific information.
More the goal would be to give it a definition, not to, as a guide, not to say, or show that that's what it is, right?
Right.
Okay. I guess I was just, posing the question, for the casual reader who may not really understand the soils thing, if we were, trying to, provide more information on existing wetlands that really can't be built on because they wouldn't, you couldn't do it. If, would I pick muck, sand muck, or, I guess which one of these soil types would be found in a wetland, or could you have a blend of soil types in? And I agree with you, Jeff. I was just trying to, make this clear to the reader.
It probably needs to be clear to the parcel owner, and you're not gonna get that specific. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You see what I mean? If you own a parcel, you need to know what your property is.
Okay.
But you can't get that specific on a little 8x12 or whatever sheet of paper for each specific parcel.
Okay.
And if I may, that would not that is not what a master plan is, providing information on exact parcels. That is not the intent. But when you were asking,
So
I answered your question based on, if the township wants to, utilize information from maps and helping use those maps for, suggested, areas for, reforestation, or like if we're, knowing where wetlands are and, where open space is, that's helpful and can help guide the township with proposing changes to the zoning ordinance. That's the purpose of a master plan. It's not to provide individual information for each parcel. It's an overview that, again,
Sure. So this should
Well, this,
suffice.
it should, I guess the only thing I would like to see added, it would be like the existing floodplains, because in many townships that have any sizable water frontage, they do have a floodplains map, and I think that would be helpful. Looking at like the public water system and public sewer, there haven't been appreciable increases to either one that I'm aware of. So those maps are probably pretty good. In our master plan, it talks about like a traffic study, and I'm looking at the map on page 55, and it kind of looks at traffic flow, but in the actual traffic study, there's a more detailed map of the, I guess, for lack of a better term, the choke points, like the, turning on to Cherry Bend, or trying to turn onto Carter Road or off of one of those, and and maybe something dealing with traffic should be in here. Also, we mention various sections in our master plan, and yet we didn't provide a plat map, so somebody could reference those sections.
if I may, I'd be more concerned about, like, are there any major changes?
Major,
I mean,
okay,
because again,
okay.
I would like to not spend, tonight and like the next couple of months, like, talking about, I mean, like, those laundry lists are great.
Okay.
But I think, again, like, as a whole, like, are there any, like, major features that are not included that, we want to include? And looking at, can we do that in-house or not? Again, my concern right now, and I don't want to push, I don't want to interrupt and stop discussion on it. I do think that would be fruitful. It's just, we do need a budget to move forward through the next year and to help us through this
Okay.
process. So if you think that, the change, in reviewing this master plan, do you think that we can, revise this in-house? Do we want to send it out for a survey? How many public meetings do we want to have? If we want to rework maps, do we want there to be some sort of analysis with it? Those kind of more big-ticket items. I'm so sorry, Rick, I just.
No,
Yeah.
I understand. I guess, in a number of areas in our plan, it talks about engaging the public. And we've had several meetings where it's been a real hot topic, and we've had a lot of public here. But that was just focused on a singular issue or a couple of issues versus like the whole, the whole plan or the whole township. And what would be a reasonable, efficient way to update that information? And we've talked about surveys. We've had surveys in the past. Is there a good way to engage the public in getting information? And maybe it's just the public saying the plan's fine, we like it, or we like it, but you might want to consider this. I don't know how sophisticated we need to be, but I think we have to have some way of getting some information back in that we can kind of quantify in the plan.
Rick, if I may, I can't think of a time that the public has come in and said there's a problem with the master plan. I can think of several times they've come in and there's a problem with our zoning ordinance. And I think we gotta not confuse the two. The master plan is general in nature and not specific. And that's, if you read what a master plan is supposed to do for you, it is not specific, it is not action-oriented, it's general in nature. And again, as I stated last time we discussed this, I agree with what Sarah said. We should review it, we should look at it. If you see a problem, we should change that problem, we should fix that problem. This is the time to do it. And I agree with Sarah, this is where we have to decide whether we're gonna spend lots of money to do this. And I'm challenging all of you to look at it and show me a problem with it where we need to spend money on this particular, money and time on this. But nobody's really come out with anything major in this master plan that needs to be redone. I don't see the point in spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 if we're not gonna change it much. And that's what it'll take to do a major overhaul. So my thoughts are, find a problem with it, and then we'll address it. But at this point, I think it's a good plan. I think we need to update some data, but we should be spending our time on the ordinance. When people come in here and there's problems, it's not the master plan they have problems with, it's our zoning ordinance. That's where we should be spending our time, and I tried to state that last month, and I probably it didn't come real clear. We have, and Sarah's very good at finding inconsistencies, and that's where we should spend our time, is our zoning ordinance and its inconsistencies, unless there's major problems here. Sorry.
Rick, if I might.
Yes.
Sarah, can you speak to the action items? You know, Jeff speaks of it being a general overlay, which I somewhat agree with, you know, but you said that, you know, in your opinion, the action items are kind of missing or just lacking generally from?
Yeah,
I mean, what is an action item, you know,
What does it
like?
look like?
Yeah, so in the notes, in the ZA notes on plan, which I provided you tonight, so apologies. I was at a conference last week, so got some information to you, and I do have extra copies if people do want to see it. So our plan does reference the Leelanau County General Plan, and then I did include some action statements that they provide. So it's not like on a singular parcel, but so an action statement could be, you know, maps and records should be created of those farm areas most likely to remain economically viable for renewable resource management, and then contiguous land units at least 40 acres in size with prime farm, orchard, and forest soils, and those areas most threatened with conservation to other uses. So it's not, it's more specific than the township. What's a good one? One of our current objectives, because again, we don't have action items, is to provide for a range of residential styles and densities to meet the needs of the township's diverse population. Yes, I agree with that statement. We've actually agreed with that statement since 2013 and earlier. We do have strategies which are, again, also extremely general. They don't provide any form of an action item. So encourage and guide the development of housing at densities that relate to natural and man-made features. It's just so general in nature. So keep in mind, master plans, yes, guidance documents. However, whenever anybody comes before the township proposing a change in the zoning ordinance, whether it be text or map, we need to relate back to our master plan. That is a standard. So if we only have these general kind of like, they're great, but if they are general, they can be argued either way. So if we're trying to like preserve agricultural land and we just have a statement that, you know, everything needs to remain open, or like, you know, trying to,
Sarah, if you could, give us an example of how you change that to be any different than what it is. I mean, I think that's,
sorry.
Well, in that exact same example, you could just give, like, instead of having, you know, it kind of dictates like how land, like undeveloped or non-performing farmland could be used for something other than, right?
Right.
You know, so I guess that would be the action item that's more specific than just the general nature of the farm, right?
See, the action items, to me, fall in the zoning ordinance again.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
the master plan is, the master plan basically should say, well, we want to be an industrial township, or we want to be a bed and breakfast community in Traverse City, and this is how we plan to achieve that. It should be as it is. It shouldn't be specific in nature that we want to provide tiny houses for 90% of the community. It doesn't make, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that wouldn't be an action item that I would propose,
Well,
but yeah.
But
mhm.
so that's why I want an example of an action item that you would propose.
Part of that, you know, if I may, you know, would be, I, as an outsider, wouldn't want to just come in and tell you how you need to plan. I would want input from, you know, the community, from, you know, board members, and talk to people, see what they want. So, talking about, you know, a story. So, where do you want to be? Okay, you want to preserve land. Okay, how do we get there? And then, you know, and so have that kind of conversation of how do we protect our land. So we would, you know, be creating overlay districts. I mean, so that could be an action item. I don't want to just create an action item and say
Well,
that's where we need to proceed.
See, I don't know how you, my question wasn't how to get to where you want to be. My question is specifically, provide us an example of an action item. I'm not asking you to do it, but I want to see how you would word something in a master plan that is not general in nature. And that's what I'm just trying to say, is our master plan does exactly what it's designed to do. We have stated we don't really want Traverse City's industry. We want to be a bed and breakfast community to Traverse City. I want a specific example from you as to how you could change something different than what it is now.
So other examples of action statements, non-prime resource land should be encouraged by local zoning to be used for new developments wherever feasible, as long as sensitive environments, in parentheses, such as wetlands, dunes, and floodplains are protected. Encourage new development on non-prime land where feasible, as long as sensitive environments such as wetlands, dunes, and floodplains are protected.
Right.
So, again, it's not incredibly, you know, so specific, it's down to a couple of parcels. It's more of a action item than a general statement.
But that's what it says now. I mean, that's what we state now. We state all that currently. So it doesn't, you haven't changed anything in the master plan by those statements. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm just giving you examples of, I mean, again, I'm not gonna come up with an action statement
Well, that's,
now.
I need it.
But I'm reading off of what's been included in other plans as action statements. They don't, you know, just list objectives. and-
One thing that stood out for me is I'm on page 26 and 27 of our plan under commercial land use. You know, the goal, I think, is good. We have some pretty good objectives, but under our strategy, the first one, maintain the city of Traverse City as a commercial focal point for residents of Elmwood Township. How do we do that?
By being, so to me what that says, because I helped with this plan. What that says is we don't really want to be the commercial focal point of the area. We want Traverse City to be at. We're going to be a bread and breakfast community for Traverse City.
Okay, then maybe we need to add that statement onto that strategy. Because somebody could read that saying, well, you know, I was thinking about putting a restaurant in Elmwood Township, but based on this, they would prefer that I look toward Traverse City. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I guess, I think this plan is worked for years, but we've had some changes that really aren't reflected in the plan. For instance, under wellhead protection, everybody wants good, clean drinking water if they're not on municipal water. But the county is soon to go to a point of sale of septic tank and sewer system inspection, and maybe under wellhead protection, there should be some mention of that. We've, under the, so I don't know, I guess we've got a little more thinking and reflecting to do on this, and,
Well, I'm the only one here really objecting to spending, I think we can look at this and find problems. I think that's probably our job here, is to, if we find problems, correct it. But again, to send this out to a company, that's what Sarah's asking. Do we want to spend the money to send this out to a company, to have them do a survey and redo a whole master plan at the cost of, we don't know for sure, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. I think it was $50,000 last time. Do we want to spend that money?
Or do we want to
Well-
budget smaller dollars for public input
Mr.
on some
Chairman.
things for a survey, just to see whatever we think that's worth, you know? Because I agree, I don't think it's necessarily worth $60,000 to rewrite something that's not going to be well, rewritten well.
okay. Doug?
I think the question's wrong. It's not do we want to, it's do we need to.
Well, that's true. And from what I'm hearing, nobody's found any major problems with this plan. And so I would say no, but yet we keep bumping our head into this and saying, let's do it. But nobody's found any specific major problem with this plan. And that's where we started 2 months ago, is
Right.
everybody review the plan, find a problem. If there's a problem, let's fix it. If there's not, let's go forward.
I guess if I were to identify a problem, I don't think the plan takes into account current public input. I don't think we have, we've got a basis survey from years ago, but we've had an increase in population. We've had sort of an economic and change, and I think we need to get some information somehow, whether it's a survey, whether it's a charrette, or whether it's, we have to somehow engage the public in this process, because we mention it a number of times in our plan. And if we don't have any evidence to say that during this plan review, we took direct steps to engage the public, then have we really fulfilled our responsibility? And I agree, Jeff, I think there's this is a solid plan, because I've been here long enough that I kind of worked on a couple of iterations too. And, but at those times, we were going off a survey, and I guess I'm not exactly sure what information I'd be asking the public for. And,
If I can rebuke that, I would say the public, every time they're in here for a meeting, tells you what the problem is.
Mhm.
They'll let you know. When they show up in multitudes, they let
Okay.
you know where the problem is.
But how-
So you're saying that every 5 years, when they ask us to review this plan, that we need to get the public involved
Well-
and redo another survey every 5 years?
Not necessarily. I'm thinking there are other ways to engage the public. I've been to other, not township meetings, but where you go in and you fill out a document, it's just a simple questionnaire. What brings you to our meeting tonight? What are your primary concerns? Do you want somebody to contact you to further discuss your concerns? It's really simple. Some people, are so thorough, they add pages to it. Other people say, I just wanted to see what was going on. I think, we could offer something, as simple and down to earth as that. But, it's up to, sometimes the public shows up just to express a specific concern about a singular item, which is great. But I guess I don't, I'm trying to think of how we would go back and quantify that over the last 5 years, aside from going back and looking at the recordings and looking at the various meetings and trying to get an idea of how many people were there. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not doing a very good job of articulating my thoughts on, getting information in from the public. I know in other areas, they have like a public comment period where you can email or write or whatever, and let's say if we made some adjustments to the plan, it would be available for public inspection, and people could say, I like the whole thing, I don't like section 2. That's a way of engaging the public, but.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just as a thought and idea, a lot of people are familiar with Google. We have access to lots of people's emails. You can easily create a Google form, which is like a survey or test with a multitude of questions or short answer paragraphs, and send that out. I mean, is that a possibility?
I did that for the Parks and Rec plan, and I will say that I'm happy to do it. It is part of my job. However, completely doing a plan in-house is very difficult, in addition with the other roles that I have for this community. That includes issuing STR licenses, issuing land use permits, reviewing all site plan review and special use permits. It's very difficult to do appropriate community outreach when it is one person doing the work. Not saying that the Parks and Rec committee did not help provide input on, how those questions were drafted or sending it out or helping with notice. They of course did all of that, but when it comes to data summarization and creating, that takes time. And I feel like if I'm focused on creating a new plan that takes time away from members of the community who have questions, who are sending emails that I can't respond to in a timely period just because I am focused on creating this plan.
I understand that, but if we're looking for direct feedback and we're trying to prioritize changing this plan and we haven't received any direct feedback, what is the other way to know what you want to change in here?
Okay, I understand your question, yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, it's kind of our job to review that, right? That's kind of what we've been kicking around.
Right, right, and you're exactly right. We're supposed to review it every 5 years, and that's, again, we're here to make a decision. Do we want to make this a major review? Do we want to spend lots of money? Or do we want to just look at it and update the data and go forward?
Rick, if I might, I just kind of keep circling back to this MSU checklist, right? This is a short form checklist. And I kind of just went through this just as a precursor to, reviewing this. And I don't check every box on here, but I definitely checked, half of them. I don't know if you guys looked at this or not, but, that doesn't necessarily, this is the crux of my, inner battle is, this doesn't necessarily mean that it needs an overhaul, but, these things jump out to me as things that have changed, in the district. And I'd say over the past 5 years. Does that mean, again, that we need a rewrite? I don't think so necessarily, but does it mean that maybe I think we should allocate some dollars for budgeting to think more about it? Since this is the last meeting to do that, I think I might.
If I may. So I guess when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about the master plan as, yes, we're telling what the township is currently, but we're also trying to look to the future of what the community sees as potential things in a township or potential things that could be happening. And I guess if we're talking about things that I'm not seeing in it that maybe could be updated, Sarah put together a really nice list. I thought of just some bullet points, which in my pile of papers I can't find. Oh, here we go. First of all, if we're using a survey from 2013 and we're gonna keep doing, maybe take that out because I don't know if that's relevant anymore. So maybe not even mention that there was a survey. housing, the fact that that has been such a a big topic for us. Climate change isn't mentioned at all. I've seen flooding in my backyard 4 times in the last, 3 years, and we don't live in a 100-year floodplain, so where the backyard doesn't. And saw a 30-foot river go through our neighbor's front door and out their back, which is a big change from even 12 years ago when we first moved here. So just looking at the future, obviously census data, but really like looking at what's happening around us. We're not an island, and trying to figure out what, maybe not specific actionable things, but really trying to have some foresight to say, yeah, this is a 5-year plan. We're going to review it another 5 years, but really let's look 20 years out. So I feel like that's kind of what a master plan is meant to do as well, as to kind of project some of those things. So the other thing I didn't see in here was like brownfield and Superfund sites, which we have a lot of contaminated property in the township, or quite a few large parcels. So if there's any input on that. Trying to think of some other ones, or there's just the ones I kind of had written down here. Oh, and then the county planning, like their updated 2019, is that, I don't know how different it was from the 2012 one, and our master plan's based off the 2012 one as far as those objectives, so I didn't know if, just in general, we should relook at that, just to make sure that that still aligns with what the county had in mind as well. Yeah, and I think demographics, looking at the demographic info and kind of just seeing the trend from 2010 to 2020. A lot of things leveled off, and then 65 and up went up, but maybe thinking about that for the future of how are we going to take care of all of our people, and what does everyone kind of need to be able to thrive in the community. So that's my input.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, and I'll just piggyback too, and I think everyone's concern is we just don't want to waste money either, If it turns out we are up for allocating some dollars, then I think we should, request that it should be well spent also. And I think that we'd probably talk more about what we actually want that to be used for if we do allocate some dollars. Because again, this is something it's not needed to be done right now. It's just, this is gonna be something that's done for the next 6 to 8 months.
Even longer.
Even longer?
18 months,
Okay.
is kind of
So
what I'm thinking.
we're well
Yeah.
ahead of this then.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But here's the issue. You can allocate money. The issue is Sarah doesn't have time to do this, to do the master plan, correct? And so if we're just gonna look at it, if we don't find fault with it, if we're just gonna add a few pages, that's something Sarah can do. Sarah can modify it easily. The choice we have to make tonight is, are we gonna do a survey, and are we gonna go through this, and are we gonna spend big money on it? Or are we just gonna do it in-house and update our data, update maybe a map or two? Or are we gonna hire this out and have it done? And that's what you've gotta decide, right?
Or a combination of the above. To be clear, I do not foresee, if this is sent out, requesting a $75,000 budget. No. I'm thinking max around 30 grand. That would include a survey, which generally speaking, with, having public charrettes with it, that would be, 10 grand is just that, because also keep in mind, you need to develop it, there's time associated with that, the mailing, that's costly, the printing, that can be costly too. Sending out the Parks and Rec survey, that was over $1,000, and all of that was done in-house, but, I wish it could be better. We have the opportunity to be better. Let's find ways to work with the community well. And, having, a group of 8 people, is great, but having, an outside person come in also could be helpful. Take that for, what it's worth. Also, I'm gonna call on you, Chris. You've been really quiet, so I'd like to hear your input on I don't mean to single you out, I'm sorry, it's just been a while.
Oh, I was just gonna, my thoughts are that, putting aside the funds to possibly do the survey, or if we need to do a survey, there are a few points that I had put down that I felt were changes, kind of piggybacking Kendra's a little bit. Just tweaking it is what I've seen. Going through the checklist like what Jonah did, there was just 2 or 3 major bullet points. I went through the whole master plan, went down the line, and I just think it needs to be just firmed up. That's best I can say. I don't, if we get to the point where we all figure out what it is that we want to say or how we want to say it, I think that's what Sarah's trying to say, is she sends it to somebody to then finalize writing it. We have to make the decisions on what it is we want to really kind of pinpoint. Am I?
Yeah, dig
Right.
into, but also not just us, the community. So generally speaking, like the first step with the master plan is to decide, again, overhaul or, you know, just making a couple of amendments, and then you know, submit an intent to plan, and then you plan, and part of that, you know, early on would be the outreach. And then based on the outreach, that's kind of when you get into like how much of a major.
Even looking at some of the survey questions and some of the percentages and stuff, none of them have even really been even brought up again, you know. The advocate for bus stops within the M22 commercial corridor, strongly agree, 34%, somewhat agree, 42%. That's huge. That is huge. And has any, I mean, have we even given it a thought?
Yeah, we did. When
But then you're not listening to your community.
G-Trax, when G-Trax went in, they put in that bus stop there, which is the one thing that we've, I mean, I would agree with you that that's the one that was very definitive, that, into providing that.
Advocate for non-motorized infrastructure. Strongly agree, 54.8%.
But then if you look at
So,
the.
so what are we gonna do about a non-motorized infrastructure?
What I'm saying is, why did you put together a survey and these were the questions, and then we haven't even kind of addressed them?
I think that was addressed towards the Tard Trail in
But
support of it.
this is the survey for the master plan, wasn't it? Or-
Right.
The
but
2013, yeah.
But the Tard Trail goes through the township. That's
And if I'm-
non-motorized.
If I may, the TART trail is only mentioned once in our master plan.
Yeah. And I think too, with that discussion on non-motorized, that was before we knew MDOT was going to do the whole sidewalk process. And we were looking at alternatives to having a safe pedestrian passageway on both sides of M22 at that point. And, but the only thing we had at our disposal at that time was the TAR trail. And, you know, that is an important finding that probably should, you know, at least be considered for review at this point. You know, am I mistaken that when M22 is redone, they're going to be doing sidewalks that are gonna?
Sidewalks and a 10-foot multi-use path.
Okay.
The 10-foot multi-use path will be on the bay side, and sidewalks obviously on the landward side of M22.
Okay, so that survey question is sort of being addressed. It's just taken, 15 years to get there.
There was quite a few that I
Mis-
Yeah.
highlighted.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to ask that we call the question. We have a lot of other agenda items this evening, and I think Chris made an excellent point. We had a survey done, and really I think, to Sarah's point, I don't think you're going to get it done that cheap. I think the last time we had this done, we spent, between the survey and the master plan, we spent better than $50,000. So that's something to look into. So it's expensive. And I think when we had the survey done, and then we had to also go back and have the survey information tallied and reviewed and put into a form that was, how do I want to say it? That was,
Like an executive summary. You could
yeah,
just,
yeah. So we went through that process so that we had charts and different stuff made out of the survey so that you could understand it better. And to Chris's point, we used it a few times after that, but other than that, it's never been opened up until this point. So take the survey for what it's worth. I've seen it done in the past, and the questions can lead people to, the problem with the survey is everybody's always for more, but how are you gonna pay for more? And so you have to, I think the survey that we did is, part of that was addressed once in a while is, yeah, sure, I'd like free garbage pickup, but how's that gonna look? What's that gonna do? You know, so surveys, you can ask us a question, but it has to be specific enough to include how would you see that being paid for? How would that program look as far as the cost of it? So I'd ask all of you to look at what Chris brought out, that the survey was done and not used, not really. We don't use it on a regular basis. And what's to say the next survey is not gonna be the same thing? I think certainly we need to review our master plan, but I have heard nobody find major fault with it. We just need to update our data, basically, and that's what I would shoot for.
Yeah, I think that, in the listing I put together, I found I had some concerns that probably would be worthy of consideration for the master plan, and I think it's gonna, it's not something that we would settle tonight. I think what would be helpful to our process is that the township's gonna need some help with updating the plan. I think people see, I'm just sensing that people feel as though the plan is, got a good basic structure, and we need to update some maps, demographics, and then we have to address some of the changes since, with, the growth, with the change in the housing utilization going from, single-family homes that were once long-term rentals have become short-term rentals. We've had quite a few changes, so I guess I'm just interested in hearing from the commissioners on, are you comfortable with updates, or do you think we need to totally revise the plan? And this is just basically an opinion. I'm not, asking for a motion or anything like that. Doug?
Mr. Chair, I would like to see basically the data that we have now included in, so that we get a more accurate picture where we are right now. And then I think there are some updates that are appropriate to it. I don't see a complete rewrite being necessary personally.
Okay. Kendra?
I don't think a complete rewrite. I would like to have community input. That's just kind of where I come from, my background of doing outreach and community outreach most of my life. I think that when you put these surveys out, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are accountable for those things and to make those those action, quote unquote, action items as something that we look into as potential changes in the zoning ordinance. And master plan can be something you refer back to say, yeah, what do we need to work on that we haven't been? Like Chris mentioned, there's all these things, you know, that the public told us they wanted to look at, and maybe we did, maybe we didn't. I've only been here, you know, a few years, but, you know, even going through just the current master plan now, I mean, there's quite a few things in there that are recommended or highly recommended that aren't addressed in a zoning ordinance. So I feel like I would love to do some sort of community input, have something like that, but I also think being very intentional about how we use that data and making sure that we are accountable in our roles here to make sure that it's something that we at least look at to
Okay.
show the public that we're listening.
Thank you.
I'm in agreement with Kendra. Like I mentioned already, I don't think we need an overhaul. I think there's things that have changed. I would be okay allocating some dollars for Sarah. Don't know how much that is, but
Yeah, I agree. I think the first step is to find some type of budget. You know, like I said, I mean, if somebody has the time, I mean, you can create a form fairly easily, which is, you know, just coming up with a couple of base questions just to kind of test it and see how much community input you get back.
Okay. Jeff, anything to add?
I would add a couple of things. Sue Jones brought us a letter tonight and she, thank you, Sue, talked about lighting and stuff those are not things that get addressed in the master plan. Those are things that get addressed in the ordinance. So that would be a ZO question. I agree completely that we should do data. I think our data that's part of reviewing your master plan. That's part of why we do this. That should be updated. If there's another map or two that we need, if you feel it's necessary. I think the interesting thing is that I think that the North School property has been taken off the brownfield now, and so I think the only one that we have left is the oil docks that I'm aware of. So that would be interesting to look at and see what's still available in the brownfield, but I think they pulled all the pumps, all the equipment off the North property, and that's been cleaned up. So I think we get community input on a regular basis if we listen to it. I think that the public comes in and the trouble with the public and the master plan is they need to understand it's just a general, it's just a broad brush of what we want to do, what we want to look like as a community. So with all that said, I agree we should allot some money for reviewing the master plan and doing some data update, but nobody's really found major problems with it or major rewrite issues. And so that monetary amount should not go for a major overhaul.
And how, would there be like a request for proposals from various?
Yes. Yeah, we would send, it would follow the appropriate bidding process, and the township would reserve the right to
Reject any and all?
yeah.
Yeah. Because it sounds like we need somebody to assist with some data collection, just looking at the census demographic, everything that's out there. And it also sounds like we need kind of an editor setup person to, just, I guess, do the typing, produce the graphs and charts and stuff like that.
Yes, and I mean, like, to review and analyze the data so we actually can, move forward and, hopefully, proceed with.
But is it up to us to, pull a dollar amount out, or is that?
No,
No.
okay. And that's, not even something that I would come back to the commission with.
Okay.
It's just,
And-
understanding, the commission, has reviewed our master plan. We are interested in pursuing an amendment to the master plan and budget, plan for a budget accordingly.
Okay. So do we need that in form of a motion?
I don't
or
believe
just-
we do. If you would feel more comfortable with doing so, you're welcome to,
Yeah,
but I can.
I guess it's, we don't control dollars and cents, so I think it's, I think we've got general consensus here that there's a good structure in the plan, it needs some updating, and maybe through the process and each one of us taking a look at the 2013 survey saying, okay, this was a concern then, how did we deal with it? Did something else, supersede it? Along the way in the next, 12 to 18 months as we're doing this, we may discover some more things, or there could be an event that, warrants a new chapter. So this won't be the last time we see master plan on the agenda, and so do you need anything more specific from the commission before the RFP would go out for bid?
Before it would go out to bid, that I would come back to you
Okay.
and get more information.
Okay.
Right now, it's just understanding how much should I, request for a
Okay.
budget.
Okay.
And I'm there. So, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we move on? Thank you, everyone. IC, capital improvement plan update.
Very quick update. I missed the deadline, again, that's on me, to get this, because the planning commission did move to have a hearing on our capital improvement plan tonight. I missed the deadline, so it'll be on your next agenda.
Okay, so November. Okay. That's it for capital improvement?
That's it.
Okay, new business, we don't have anything before us. Item K, discussion on zoning ordinance. Item K is, that's sort of a new addition to our agenda. It was, Jeff that suggested that, when we have opportunities, we should be able to discuss a zoning, some of the ordinances at our meetings. So Sarah has kind of given us an initial list of areas that, she has some concerns. So going with KA, accessory buildings.
Okay, so in your packet and on the e-packet, I did propose a few different changes, so just to kind of guide you. So the first proposed change is regarding accessory buildings. My reasoning for the proposed change is that R1 and R2 zoning districts have the same minimum lot areas and should therefore share the same limitations with the number of accessory buildings. And then I also kind of expressed some concern over, our ordinance is clear that only one dwelling is allowed per lot. However, some people have created accessory structures and then without pulling a land use permit have possibly switched it into a dwelling. I would like something solid in our ordinance that it's very easy to cite. And so I propose, A5, so accessory buildings or any portion thereof shall not be converted and or used as a dwelling, sleeping rooms, or similar use unless or until the owner requests and obtains the appropriate permit from the township. Any such permit shall not be issued until the zoning administrator has determined that the change complies with applicable provisions of this ordinance and issues a land use permit. So it kind of solidifies, it clarifies what's in our ordinance. This is not, at least that portion of it, I should say. It clarifies what's already in our ordinance. It gives me, if and when I am issuing a letter of violation, I have a clear section of the ordinance to refer to, not, referencing like 4 different sections. It would be helpful for that. And sorry, circling back to accessory buildings. So the first one is just adding R1. So R1, R2, and R3 have the same number of maximum accessory structures that are allowed on their lot.
Okay.
And friendly reminder, I did include it in my memo. This isn't an introduction for them. It's just, I wanted to get input in the commission if they want to see, my suggestions, proceed. So if you feel like, this should be considered, we'd move to, introduce it at a next meeting.
See, and I would say that my quick thoughts on accessory buildings, if you want them, is that an accessory building should never be a dwelling, should it?
No,
So.
unless the township wanted to proceed with ADUs, but we're not there.
So maybe we could just simply state that in our definitions, an accessory unit or building will never be a dwelling unit, and not, just another way of going around this. So if it said that in our definitions, is not a bedroom or whatever. I mean, this probably would do it, but it almost implies that maybe in other districts, you could have an accessory building that did.
That might be unclear with how I have it listed, but if you look at our ordinance, so this is section 3. So accessory structures. 7. Sorry.
So if you look under accessory building, if you look at that definition, if you want, I'll read it to you. It says an accessory building or structure, a building or structure that is the use of which is incidental or subordinate to the principal use of the lot, or the principal building shall, such as a garage or a storage building. When storage is not the primary use of the property, so so maybe just simply in that definition you state an accessory building shall never be a dwelling unit?
We could add it to the definition.
Maybe it doesn't do what you want. I just was thinking outside of what you had there a little bit.
I mean, if I may, so, I mean, my intent, so definition should be very, there should be no regulations necessarily in the definition. Any additional kind of standards or statements would be incorporated into a different section of the ordinance. So for example, section 5 of the ordinance, and then section 5.7, which is specifically regarding accessory buildings index. I mean, that's generally speaking, our definitions kind of follow that standard.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think all of our definitions are there for a specific reason. They define things for a reason. And so even that accessory building defines things for a reason. So even what's stated there has certain definitions to it. But it doesn't matter if this is the way you think it should be, or that you think it's best, that's fine.
I think it's written well, and it states that it's not to be used as sleeping quarters, essentially, right?
Yeah, and this is coming to light, it's not super frequent, but it's just, I am concerned because some people are proposing an accessory building that, again, it's pure, I issue a land use permit because it's clear, it is an accessory structure, it's for storage, and then there's a restroom in there. However, then I remain concerned that, what if they put a cot in there?
It becomes a bedroom in a
Yeah,
house, or a
so-
small house, right?
I like it because I've been opposed to this for years, so I'm excited about it.
I think it's clear.
Rick, are we gonna go through each of these and just say, yeah, we like that,
And then I can put it for a formal introduction.
Yeah, I think we can just kind of consense that this should move forward or it needs work.
And, sorry, clarification, are you also okay with adding R1, R2, and R3? I mean, okay.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to review that a little bit, but I can do that.
All right. So do we want to move on to the next one?
Yes.
So this is KB definition. So I am proposing a definition of frontage, which, pretty straightforward, very standard. And also, adding, the red text to non-conforming parcels. So evidence of legal access to any non-conforming parcel shall be provided to issuance, prior to issuance of any land use permit for development.
Okay.
It's like adding additional standard in the definition, which is very contradictory to what I originally said, but,
Yeah. I'm
So,
glad you
yeah.
caught that, because I didn't want to say it.
If I make a mistake, I will gladly share that mistake.
The only one thing I noted under, it reads with regards, and it probably should just be with regards since it's singular. Under frontage.
Yep.
Should be,
Yeah.
take the S out.
There we go. And we're on dwellings now?
Well,
Oh,
are
sorry.
people all
We're in
right with
agreement?
moving that for
Yes.
introduction? So for dwellings, so, our ordinance, section 3.5, one dwelling per lot, it says in a residential zoned district. That could be cleared up by saying in any zoning district, and I recommend that change just because later in this same sentence, it does go on to say that, you know, you can have more if it's allowed in any given zoning district. So again, it's just a clarification. Then the other, you know, suggested change in this section would be, you know, adding that, you know, prior to the dwelling being occupied, applicant shall obtain a CO from, certificate of occupancy from the county. And then also clarifying what a dwelling is. So use is allowed under any other applicable provisions of this ordinance. A tent, camper, RV, yurt, or any other similar use shall not be used as a dwelling, and doing so shall be deemed a violation of this ordinance. So for example, we've gotten a couple of calls, can I like live on my property in an RV? It's not a dwelling because it's not a structure, but in order for, you know, a regular person to be reading the ordinance, they wouldn't get that. But if they were to see a section like this, where it full out says, all of these like uses, you cannot use them as a dwelling. I think that would clarify, again, for any member of the public. So I view it again as a clerical change, clarifying change.
So if I had a piece of property and I wanted to live in a yurt, I couldn't do it.
No.
Why is that?
That was my retirement plan.
Just kidding. If that structure or yurt were to meet the definition of, or like the minimum requirements of a, you know, residential home, so that would be a minimum of 720 square feet and minimum width of 24 feet, you know, then it could fall under, you know, that, if it would be a structure, and then it could be used as a dwelling. However, if it's just your general
Your
yurt that doesn't have.
run-of-the-mill yurt.
Yeah. Mhm.
Your run-of-the-mill yurt.
Yes.
Yurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So you could have a yurt on your property?
750 square feet.
No?
20. Well, so if it's
Yes, but I
purely a
couldn't
structure.
dwell
In
in
addition
it.
to your house.
Right, in addition to your house.
But you could not rent it out.
Right.
You could not use it as a dwelling if you know, if somebody were to submit a complaint and that property owner is using that, you know, that structure as a dwelling, that would be in violation of the zoning ordinance.
So how is a yurt different from a tent? So somebody can't pitch a tent, but they can, or they can pitch a yurt, can't pitch a yurt, but they can pitch a tent?
They can't
They
live in
can't
a
do
tent.
either.
Well, but you're not, I mean, a yurt, you wouldn't necessarily live in year-round necessarily. But you might spend a night out there.
We could strike the word yurt.
Okay, I'm just thinking, you know,
Yeah.
because I know people that have gazebos that put a hammock in them and they sleep out there at night, you know?
Yeah, well, they wouldn't be using that as a dwelling though, so you wouldn't be, well, you'd be sleeping, but, I mean, living space, okay,
There'd be no
arguably, but like
closet.
cooking facilities,
No
no.
closets.
Well, yeah, okay.
Unless you want a little
A grill.
campfire or whatever.
So-
A grill or whatever.
We're gonna strike yurt.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
yurt, and
Sorry.
otherwise, are
Quick
people okay
question
with that?
For you, Sarah, don't we have some, other things like with farmers having people live on their property that would qualify under some of those definitions?
So unless allowed under any other applicable provisions of this ordinance. So that's kind of my catch-all that I throw in. Because yes, I do understand, seasonal housing help, that is, something that is later on, that I'm proposing. But yes, I mean, they would be able to use a yurt, for that. Okay, yeah, no worries. So introduction?
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, so setbacks and table of dimensional requirements. So I'm really just seeking to clarify the ordinance and, legitimize, let me just stumble over my words continuously this evening, pretty much just include historical past practice and interpretation. So, sorry, I skipped one. So building projections. So this text verbatim was in the previous zoning ordinance. So it allows, projections of eaves. So no like structure on the ground, just the eaves. So like the not the ceiling, but the overhangs. Those can extend into the setbacks without obtaining a variance. Again, it used to be within the ordinance, and when it went through that overhaul in 2017, somehow it did not make it back into the ordinance. It was removed. I think, again, it would be helpful to,
So awnings and
Exactly,
eaves
yeah.
should
Yep.
be, they should be within the setbacks, is what this is
well,
stating.
they can exceed 12 inches into the setbacks.
Oh,
Okay, but let's say if you have a home with 24-inch overhang,
so
That
you-
would not be allowed
So you'd build it a foot.
Without a variance.
you'd build
without a
it-
variance, thank you.
okay,
So
but
you'd
if,
build it a foot from your setback and then.
right, but if the home, if the foundation wall to the setback is, let's say 10 feet, and you've got 24-inch eaves on the house, you've gone from 10 to 8 feet on, so you're encroaching in the setback. So basically, homes that have that now would be considered non-conforming to that?
No, it wouldn't be creating, oh, sorry, Jeff.
No, sorry. It used to be. It used to always be from the eave line.
Mhm.
That's the way it used to be, correct?
Yes.
And that's the way it should be, and that's why she's proposing it.
Okay.
But she's actually giving you, I think, an extra foot, which.
Yeah, well,
No, this is verbatim what used to be in
Really?
our zoning ordinance.
Huh, I didn't remember the 12 inches
Yeah, I
into the
didn't either.
setback. Huh,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. So you build, if you want a 2-foot setback, or a 2-foot eve, you set your house 1 foot from the setback line, and you're still legal, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense, yeah.
And people will use that every inch.
But to
Mhm.
clarify, this wouldn't be like living space. This is an overhang of
Mhm.
Or an awning,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so people comfortable with that proceeding forward?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I may add, do you want to give the 12 inches? I mean, it can confuse things. So it's something you should think about, something that you, because most overhangs are more than 12 inches. And so that's exactly what people will have to do, because especially on the lakefronts, people build from lot line to lot line. And so that if their setback is 15 feet, they're gonna build at 16 feet and still put their overhang a foot over into the property line. Is that acceptable to you? Is it, I mean, they're gonna use it if you put it there. If you give them that, they're gonna use it.
Well, it's how
But-
it's been interpreted. So
Sure.
I know the past zoning administrator, I mean,
Right.
this
And-
is, again, how it's been interpreted.
And so, rather than change it, I'm not saying we should change it or shouldn't change it, but I guess that, what you've stated makes me think that we shouldn't change it, because that's what it's been forever, rather than confusing new construction with old construction. Here it is, this is what we're gonna do.
Okay.
It's the same as what we've always done.
Yeah, because essentially by removing this section from the zoning ordinance, we created nonconformities.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Well, did we? So did it go to the house line while it wasn't this, or did it go to the roof line? I thought it was always to the roof line.
It's,
So I don't know that we created any.
yeah, I may have misspoke,
Yeah, okay.
apologies.
So this can move forward? Okay. 4,
Okay, so this is, reasoning for a proposed change, need to clarify historical past practice, so,
sorry.
including,
3.
under minimum lot requirements, currently it just says width, but full out stating minimum road frontage. So this goes back to, we define frontage, we are, requiring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next couple it's a lot of new proposed text, so I don't know if you want more time with this, but I'm not gonna read, everything. So currently, our seasonal help housing has no standards whatsoever. It just includes a definition, which is just temporary living quarters for use for seasonal and internet farm employees and migratory workers during normal growing and harvesting seasons only. Seasonal help housing may include tents, mobile homes, manufactured homes, or other buildings and structures.
No yurts?
That's it. Yes,
No
no
yurts.
yurts. But a yurt is a similar use to it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We won't get into that again. So I have gotten, again, a handful of questions, and, one land use permit application for seasonal help housing. But I have very little, if nothing, to go on, like what I'm looking at, So I looked at what other townships require and, guidance that I've gotten from the state, so I proposed these items. We can.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
You borrowed very heavily from Sutton's Bay on this
Yes.
one. Do you know have you feedback from them on how it's worked out?
No, but I can get feedback from them on how it's worked out.
It
Mhm.
might be nice to
Yeah.
maybe come back to this one due to its voluminous contents.
But spend some time with it. Look at
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay. Lighting?
So-
Lighting.
Yep.
Sue, this is for you.
And I think actually, because this is a section that, I did not, when I was reading the ordinance originally, I didn't see an issue with it, but then there are no the very limited exemptions. And I would also kind of point out that currently holiday lights are not so technically not allowed under our current zoning ordinance, and that must change.
You have an opportunity to be a real Scrooge.
That's too Grinchy.
I would not do that. Honestly, if I got a complaint about it, I mean, it'd be one of those things I'd have to, reach out, but before proceeding with anything, I would touch base with our supervisor and township board, and without actually formally, reaching out to the township board, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want me going out and issuing tickets for holiday lights. Anyway, that is not the only thing that I think needs a little bit more work on this section. Clarifying, not just down facing, clarifying that it's facing towards the ground, and, just kind of cleaning up some of the verbiage. Again, some of those exemptions, which, are from other municipalities, so residential decorative lights, those can be exempted. Decorative lights, neon lights, for example, if somebody, commercial businesses, so, Cherry Bend Market, they have a neon sign right now. The bulbs are bare. I mean, I read it as, if I was really trying to be, it's one of those things where I think these exemptions would be helpful to the township, and are not malicious towards any, property owner. And also, the exemption for, fossil fuel lights and gas lights.
Sarah, let's go back to A. I don't know, it says lighting from exposed bare light bulbs or from bare luminous bulbs shall not be permitted. What's that saying?
So whenever there is a bare bulb, so Christmas lights, that's a bare bulb. So,
I think of houses that have guess, I don't know, if they have a cover on them, that's enough of some sort? I mean,
That, I mean, if it was a cover, it wouldn't be bare, so that would be allowed.
so if it's just plug-in bulb, yeah, okay, I see it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, no Christmas lights. Unless they
I don't
got-
mean to like circle in on that,
No,
but once,
but-
once I saw it, that was the only thing I could see.
Well, I look at flagpole lights, because they shoot up at the flag,
Mhm.
but they're covered on the bottom.
Right,
I mean, we have one out here.
yeah.
How's that addressed? Because it's not supposed to be upward facing, but it's supposed to be upward facing.
We could add an exemption for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you'd have to.
yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to be picky.
Oh,
just-
no, I mean, quite
Okay.
frankly, I think it's great.
Now, under C, it says there'll be no lighting of a blinking, flashing, or fluttering, et cetera. Now, do the holiday lights exempt that? Because one of the trendy things now is the projection lights that go from snowflakes to snowmen to reindeer and changing colors on the garage door, the front of the house,
Yeah.
The neighbor's house.
neighbor's house. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's, I think everybody, you know, gets in the holiday spirit and kind of enjoys that. And then you have the people that put up a lovely nativity set and have it bathed in a gentle green floodlight.
We could strike blinking, because I would say that the common definition for flashing would be more, you know, frequent than, I mean, when I read this, I'm inclined to say it would be more like a strobe light, if you will.
Okay,
So, very frequent in nature.
so the,
Flashing icicles on a house wouldn't be,
no, but the hanging icicles that are lit would be okay. yeah.
so you can light them, but you can't flash them.
Again, but aren't those things all covered under
Yeah, I
exceptions?
think under the
Holiday
exceptions,
decorative
yeah.
lights.
Well, and.
Thank you.
And
So
if you
Kind of
want,
encompasses all of that.
I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
you know.
so do you want to put a time frame on that? Because people could do that year round.
No, I think Jonah's point is sound, where, you know,
Holiday decorative.
those kind of things would be exempt.
So, so you can do that exemption year round.
If it's a holiday light. But then what
They're
holiday?
So-
They're holiday lights.
Then when,
Have your Christmas
when
lights up
people
all-
on their
People do.
projector lights take the Christmas disc out and put in the Easter disc where you see the eggs and the bunnies and the baskets. Yeah, I'm just, you know, it's just,
And it
It's a
doesn't-
holiday. It's
not-
covered.
It's not been a problem.
No.
I don't think we need to be that specific with our ordinance, but it's something that could come up.
Mm-hmm.
I
No,
really-
that's a good point. I'll spend some more time with that, see if
Okay.
other places have, you know, better examples.
Like I say,
But-
I don't think we need to regulate it. It's not really been a problem, but if you want to be specific, maybe you should.
okay. So we'll come back to lighting.
Well, I want to ask Sue. Sue, does this cover any of your lighting concerns? Have you looked at it?
Yes, I have looked at it. I feel like it does. I would just say, you know, floodlights without any shields are a problem
Yeah,
if they're not directed.
downward, or at least in their yard, not to light the three neighbors down the road
Most lights nowadays are all LED as well, which are significantly brighter.
brighter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Land use?
So this kind of circles back to my concerns. If somebody is submitting an accessory structure, there's a bathroom in it, I want to be able to require at the time of filing for that land use permit that I can require an affidavit stating, you know, the use shall remain this until or unless, you know, we seek. We're close to the 9 PM.
Right.
So I just am proposing some changes to the section of land use permits to allow me to require an affidavit. And then just clarifying what land use permits are required for. Again, the text is already there, but it's a little bit wonky, if you will.
That's one I want to spend a little more time with before we put it on the docket
Yeah.
to adopt it.
Right, so we'll return it. Okay. It's now 9 o'clock, so I'll need a motion from one of the commissioners to continue beyond our 9 o'clock as we sort of have 9 o'clock as our closure time in our handbook.
I'll make the motion that we conclude our business.
Okay, we have a motion to conclude the rest of the agenda.
Second that.
We have support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We will continue. Thank you. Comments from Chair. Thank you for being so well prepared tonight, everyone, and thank you for the good discussion we had with respect to the master plan. And it is gratifying that we can have various opinions and be able to express them in a respectful, professional environment. And that means a great deal to me, and I thank you for offering your opinions. And I think that is why we work so well at doing the business for the township. Thank you. M, comments from planning commissioners?
If I may,
Yes.
I'd like to thank public comment. It was just good to hear from the public and to see people from the public, so really appreciate that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I personally like doing, Jeff had suggested a few months ago, adding discussion on zoning ordinance. I really feel like that is a great way where we can actually communicate about the changes that we need to make within our ordinance. I know we talked a lot about the master plan, but I think that's where a bulk of the planning it comes from.
I would agree with Nathan. I think that Sarah is very good at details and seeing problems, and as the problems come in, we need to correct them. And this is the spot to get them corrected and get it figured out, so we don't keep banging our head into the wall with the same problem again next time. So I hope every time you see a problem with the ordinance that you put it in a hanging file and put it in this spot, so we get that ordinance. Because the ordinance is, that's our document.
Yeah.
Uh,
And you think of how many years it took to revise the zoning ordinances, and then for years we were living on, this was old, this was new, and then we kind of got to all new, and then
Right.
I think there was just a period of we were just thankful that we didn't have to
I think
talk
it's-
ordinances.
I think it's great. I hope
Yeah.
you continue to do what you did here, whatever's going to clarify that ordinance and make it easier for us to work with.
And for the public, sorry,
Mhm.
this is
No.
not my time to speak.
No, that's fine. This is sort of the gentle discussion time at the table.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Comments from staff?
Thank you all, I appreciate it. Just want to kind of give a couple of updates. I do have a couple of applications that I am reviewing, doing the second and multiple completeness review on them. It'll make it to your agenda when it makes it to your agenda, but just wanted to remind you, I'm working on some other applications.
Major projects or?
The resort project up in Timberlake.
Oh,
So yeah, I got that revised application yesterday, so working on that. And once I deem it's complete or mostly complete, I'll put it before you guys, and it'll follow the appropriate public process. I also want to, again, I'm very happy to see multiple people here. It's really great, so.
Okay, thank you. We are at the second portion of public comment. The public comment can be on any topic. Hopefully it's related to zoning. And we ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes. If you wish to make a public comment, please come to the podium. I'll open the second public comment session at 9:04 p.m.
Hi, I'm Morgan Burkbyers, 10340 East Cherry Bend Road. I just wanted to say I really appreciated the conversation that was going on about master planning today. I also just wanted to bring up that I like that the survey results got brought up, and the fact that that was done in 2013. I also noticed that there were only about 500 that were returned out of an estimated 4,500 for our Elmwood Township population. And just kind of bring up that, like, when we start doing RFPs and things, it might behoove us to like look at like marketing companies who do a lot of surveying these days, particularly through, you know, social media means and things of that nature. And maybe a way to get different and better results than the typical companies that do planning and things for commissions, might be a way to get more people engaged. Other than that, I think there's a lot of things that can be looked at by the community, and 10 years from the last time that this kind of surveying was done, I think is really important to include and see what people have to say now. So I think that's really all I've got to say. Thank you guys for all your work.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, Jessica Young, 10430 East Grandview Road. I'm pretty excited about the possibility of having input into the master plan. Our kids are 16 and 18, and they'll very likely inherit our home, and they're so young, and it's very clear that they have a very different vision than we do of their future, and I urge you to keep thinking of the master plan not so much as a reflection of problems that people have, and I know people do come here with their problems, and they can be the squeaky wheels, but we also need to allow the voices to rise up that have a positive message and a vision for the future. So I'm in marketing, and we work on mission statements and vision statements all the time, and people kind of conflate those, but a vision statement is very important because it really guides everything that the company does towards a point. And it's so critical because, as I understand it, the zoning ordinance really needs to reflect what's in the master plan. And it would be really awesome to see if a survey does get done again, that I don't know how this works. I'm sure the professionals involved in this do, but I'm assuming if there is a certain level of interest in something that maybe it's 20%, that gets implemented into the master plan automatically. And thank you for all your work. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm George Bowers, also of 10430 East Grandview. And I just want to add to what Morgan and my wife said. The spirit of the master plan, as Commissioner McDonald said, it is a guideline, but the issue as I see it is that the zoning ordinance keeps referring back to the spirit of the master plan. So we do want a master plan that sort of reflects that vision. And I'm glad to hear personally that the commission seems to feel that there doesn't need to be costly, extensive revisions to it, because I think it is basically a decent working document that does need some deletions and some additional information. And sometimes less is more, and we do come out when there's problems, and we did come out when there were problems with the zoning ordinance. And we needed definition on density and a better understanding of our wetlands. And you guys did that work and resolved the issue, in a way that I think suited the needs of the community as opposed to the needs of the developer or other outside agencies who, saw this township as a resource for other townships, which is one way to view it, but I think it was pretty clear that the residents of this township came out and they didn't feel that was the case. So thank you for doing that work, and thank you for continuing service. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll close the second comment period at 9:09 p.m. And we are at the area of adjournment.
A motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. We have support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone.